I'm having so much fun with set 13 so far, and I feel like we are still far from discovering everything that's possible. I really had to think about which topic I should cover first, and I decided to go over one of my favorite comps in the game because it might be leaving us rather soon, but more on that later. First, I'm willing to bet that you can't hit the subscribe button before this Sevika cleans up the enemy board. Are you ready? Go!
Yes, yes, yes! Woo.
And hey, even if you didn't make it, I still appreciate your support. Let's get started. Now you might be surprised to hear this, but the comp I will be talking about today is Maddie Bruiser reroll. Wait, before you click off the video, I assure you there is way more to this comp than you think. Here is how it works. In the beginning, everything is very simple. You collect Trundle, Step and Maddie while looking to reach 50 gold as fast as possible, so you can slowly roll the interest to upgrade your core to 3-star. I strongly recommend putting all of your tank items on Step because he is an absolutely amazing frontliner. For the backline, you want to prioritize items like Ginzo, Last Whisper and Infinity Edge on Maddie. Now you might think Maddie might do a lot better with a Shojin, but there is a very good reason why we are skipping this item. In stage 3-2, you should be level 5 and continue to slow roll. At this point, you should have a Maddie 2-star with a Ginzo and 4 upgraded Bruisers in the frontline. One of the first mistakes players make is over-prioritizing sniper units like Zeri or Kog'Maw. You will not need them right now. Having a fully upgraded 4 Bruiser frontline together with a Ginzo carry in the backline should keep you healthy enough. Stage 3 is also when the first important aspect of this comp arrives: positioning. You might remember the Ziggs trick I showcased in the last set, and it turns out we can abuse it again. Here is how it works. You want to position your main tank with items on the very top right of the first row. You want your next best frontliner in the middle of the first row and the 2 remaining Bruisers below him. This positioning will create a gap in the enemy frontline as long as your main tank is not required to move to the left. By placing Maddie in D3, which is the 3rd hex in the last row, she is in perfect position to snipe the enemy corner through the front line. While this might not always work perfectly, throughout the game it will become much more reliable once players start stacking their frontliners. This can also work for the other corner if you place your main tank in A1 and your entire remaining Bruisers, including Maddie, move 1 to the right. Most players have their carry in the top right, so you won't have to make the swap too often, but this can still be useful in the late game. In case you're wondering why we're isolating the main tank, if we would place a weak filler unit on that hex, the unit would get taken down quickly and then the enemy frontliners would move back to their original position, closing the gap that we created at the start. Let's continue with the game plan. The next step is to roll for your 3-stars. You want to be finished in stage 4-1 with Maddie 3-star and Step 3-star. Trundle 3-star is a nice bonus to have, but you don't have to go out of your way to find him. Once you have your 3-stars, you want to push to level 7 and play 6 Bruisers with Maddie in the backline. In case you didn't find Elise yet, you can play either Zeri, Kog'Maw or Twitch for the time being. Now comes the most important part of this comp, rolling for a specific anomaly. This is often a make or break part for this comp because depending on how deep you have to roll, it can mess up your late game to an extent. You are looking for Cosmic Rhythm specifically for Maddie. This will cause her to cast every 4 seconds as long as she is not crowd controlled. Maddie will become an absolute beast with this anomaly, and even better, you get to transfer your items. You should have a magnetic remover from the PvE stage so you can move items like Ginzo and Last Whisper to Twitch and focus fully on damage items like Infinity Edge, Giant Slayer or even Silvermare Dawn. From here you can push towards level 8 or 9, run the 6 Bruisers and play a strong Twitch as a secondary carry. On level 9 you can either add a second Elise, a Mundo for 3 Experiment or run something like Caitlyn for additional damage. I would recommend aiming for Twitch 3-star as your final win condition as long as you don't have any Experiment players remaining in your lobby. Your entire late game will often be decided by positioning. You want to scout your possible matchups and make sure to create holes in the enemy frontline to get rid of the enemy carry within the first 5 seconds of the fight. This way you can often secure yourself a free win in late game and save up enough HP to secure yourself a top 4 placement. Now I did mention that this comp might not be around for much longer, but that's only true to an extent. To make Maddie viable in the late game, you need to find Cosmic Rhythm. At the moment you can force this anomaly if you're willing to spend up to 60 gold for it, but this might not be the case forever. There is a good chance that getting a specific anomaly in the future will be more difficult, since we've seen the problems that can arise if you allow players to hard force. While this would create a more healthy meta in the long run, unfortunately it also means that comps like these become more unreliable as they are based around a single anomaly. While you're stuck with a specific anomaly, you have a lot of freedom with items and augments. For example, Maddie is a big fan of running a second Infinity Edge, or you replace her Ginzo with a Hand of Justice for bonus damage and sustain. If you're lacking anti-heal, then Twitch is the perfect holder for either red buff or Morello. You are not required to put the Morello on Elise, since Twitch will effectively tag the entire enemy board within his first cast. For artifacts, I already mentioned that Silvermare Dawn is amazing because you can give it to Trundle in the early game and then move it to Maddie once you find Cosmic Rhythm. Other artifacts like Hull Crusher can also be incredibly useful, since your positioning requires an isolated tank in the first row anyway. Just be careful about items like Ludens, since Maddie works more like Akshan and less like Caitlyn. You're not really dealing any meaningful overkill damage and you're likely wasting an item slot. For augments, this might be a bit controversial, but I don't recommend going for either Bruiser Crest, Bruiser Crown, or Bulky Buddies. The Bruiser emblem is incredibly worthless because we're currently lacking an 8 Bruiser chase trait. While someone like Mundo would be a good user for the emblem, he joins rather late and doesn't provide enough value to justify the augment. As for Bulky Buddies, it does sound appealing with the bonus HP and max health shield, but it often comes at the cost of your very specific positioning, which is why I tend to avoid it. An augment I can recommend is anything that helps you with your reroll, like superstars, or if it has a powerful effect like investment strategy. Since you intend to keep your units from start to finish and slow roll with 50 gold, the bonus HP becomes incredibly valuable in this Bruiser comp. The final aspect I want to talk about are matchups. In general, you should have a good matchup against anyone who's focusing on range carries and doesn't pay too much attention to their positioning. Towards the late game, when you always know your opponent, things can become a bit tricky. If you see your enemy placing his carry in the middle of the last row, then it might be time to swap to a more conventional positioning and maximize the sniper damage. Your worst matchup are usually strong melee carries, since your setup is based around sniping the enemy corner. This doesn't help you much if you're facing a quick striker or ambusher reroll comp. In this case, you need to make sure that there's enough distance between the enemy carries and your own carries, and hope that your best frontliners buy you enough time. Honestly, I had so much fun with this comp already, even when I ended up struggling against the final opponent. Watching the enemy carry disappear seconds into the fight is just so incredibly satisfying that I recommend you give this comp a try and see if it works for you. Let me know in the comments how your games went. I hope you learned something, and see you next time.